Good morning, Wall Street winners. It is Tuesday, October the 8th, and we have a number of different headlines coming across the wire here on the Bloomberg terminal. And I'd say the biggest one has to do with Israel to hold talks in the U.S. I think the Israeli defense minister is coming over to Washington to talk to the Biden administration and are looking to understand what their plans are against bombing of the oil fields in Iran, which is what is driving up crude oil prices right now. Is the concern that may affect oil production and the supply, and hence the price of that. We're also seeing the Chinese economy, or the Chinese stock market, has come back from its 1 week holiday over in China, and the euphoria has worn off slightly with some statements, or a lack of statements, after the stimulus from some of the government officials. So we're waiting to kind of see where the chips fall over there and whether China will hit their 5% growth target for the year, which many people feel is realistic. And how the stimulus will impact and hopefully spur consumer spending over in China. We've also got Hurricane Milton approaching Florida. This was after Hurricane Helene has already had devastating effects along the coast, particularly the east coast of the United States of America. And that's where we are today with the main headlines. If we move over to, actually, let's go back to Bloomberg for a second and look at the market. So we're about 36 minutes out from the start of trading, and we can see that it's green across the screen for all the indices. Yesterday was kind of an off day, so looks like we may make back some of the losses from yesterday. That said, there's also been some fairly significant discussions or announcements in the semiconductor space in the last day or so. One of them from Samsung, who reported worse than expected results, saying that the chip manufacturing process is much more difficult, and the demand for chips to support AI is overwhelming. We also heard an announcement from another Taiwanese company out saying that they were going to partner with NVIDIA, and they feel that there is a huge opportunity there because of NVIDIA's growth trajectory and the demand for AI chips. So what we can see here, if we scroll across the top, is that crude is actually off today. It's down $1.40. I think that's temporary. I mean, it's climbed a fair bit in the last couple of days. I think this is a minor decline, and we're going to see this rally continue in oil. If we move across to the NASDAQ futures, they're green, and we've got the VIX just under 22. This is relatively high from where we've seen the VIX over the course of the last year. I mean, if you look at the VIX and look at the 1 year chart, most of it's around the 12 to 15 range. So that's kind of where we want to get back to. This spike here back on August 5th was when the Japanese yen trade unwound, and there were a lot of options positions that were changing over, and that caused all the markets, specifically the NASDAQ, to really take a tumble, and it drove the VIX up. So what we're seeing now is the VIX is at the highest level it's been since that jump on that 1 day outlier. So we do want to keep an eye on the VIX. We also want to keep an eye on the interest rate discussion, and almost everyone on Wall Street is now saying that the next cut from the U.S. Fed will be 25 basis points. It's the second 50-point cut is effectively off the table at this point. So where we are in health and retail in the Yahoo Finance app, we've got Costco making a bit of a recovery, but really only a third of what it was down yesterday. So looking to see that come back and get back up into the 900s by the end of October. We've got Lululemon, stock that has just struggled this year. It's really gotten pummeled this year, below 300, down in the low 270s. We scroll through the list. Walmart dropped almost $2 yesterday, so that's close to 2%, maybe more than 2%, and down under 80. Let's keep an eye on Walmart because there could be a buying opportunity coming with Walmart if that stock gets into the low 70s. We've got Home Depot, which has climbed up above 400. If we take a look at Home Depot in the 6 month, it's really the first time that it has been above 400 in the last 6 months. So that's an interesting turn of events there. And maybe what we're starting to see is because of that 50 basis point cut, the feeling is that consumers have more discretionary income, and because they're not going to go out and get a new mortgage at a higher rate, even though rates have come down a little bit, they're waiting and they're making improvements to those homes prior to selling. So that's kind of the thought process likely around that one. You've got healthcare, which had a bad day yesterday, recovering for the most part in a lot of these different stocks, but not an exciting sector by any means. CNR down in the 154s, popped up and then basically closed right where it opened yesterday. Not much of a movement there. JB Hunt falling a little bit yesterday and in the pre-market today. And then we get down to oil, and it's mostly green on the screen here from yesterday, but red on the screen today. So you can see that almost everything in the pre-market is pulling back a little bit here. You've got the Chevron announcement yesterday, which lifted it, but then it kind of fell back and only increased 38 cents. It's now off $1.38. So it's definitely losing the gain and then some from yesterday. And that's after that big announcement that they were selling their share in the Canadian oil sands to Canadian Natural Resources. So here we go into tech, and in tech, NVIDIA is booming, so is NVDL, so those are up. Micron is down slightly in the pre-market. It was up earlier. If we just look for the outliers here, you can see that one of the big movers yesterday, if we scroll down through the list towards the bottom here, was Meta, which was down $11. We also had Amazon off 6. Amazon got a downgrade from one of the big investment houses saying that they feel that it's a little overpriced at this point and doesn't have that much opportunity to grow. Not saying I agree with that, but it definitely impacted that stock in the overall market yesterday. Tesla was off as well yesterday, down 10. It's up a couple of bucks today. We're waiting on Tesla later in the week for its autonomous driving announcement. And if that goes well and is well received and there's some immediacy and some next steps and immediate action on that, I think Tesla could get a nice jump. Otherwise, I could see it dropping down to the low 200s. I do like Meta as a company for sure. I think it's got a ton of potential. I feel like it's a little overvalued in the market we're in right now, up in the 584 range. So I'm waiting for a bit of a pullback to buy back into that. And then the Chinese stocks. So with all this talk and coming out of the 1 week long holiday in China, the stocks are pulling back based on some uncertainty and maybe a lack of clarity in messaging from some of the Chinese officials. So you're seeing a pretty significant pullback there in BABA. It looks like it's going to be down in the 109, 110 range today at open. But NVIDIA is doing well. It was up at 127, almost 128 yesterday. It looks like it's going to get over that 130 barrier. And I think if it gets over 130, it's going to continue to move upwards. Google got hit yesterday with that announcement out of the Department of Justice where Google lost a lawsuit around Google Play and how it's proprietary to its own developers and apps. And Google is pushing back. It's appealing that decision. We'll see what happens there. Typically, these things go for many years in the courts, and there's very little resolution. Thinking back, a great example, they're in a situation that Microsoft was in years ago with the Department of Justice wanting to unbundle Internet Explorer from the Windows operating system. Now the Department of Justice wants to unbundle Chrome from the Android operating system. If we look at history, this typically works itself out in the end and does not massively affect these companies. By the time they continue the fight and it just pushes the can, kicks the can down the road, they've had enough time to rework everything and have on a stronger footing and maybe take some concessions on what the Department of Justice is looking to do. TSM, another semi-stock, had a great day yesterday. The one that I'm looking for to catch up today is Lam Research. So this was a stock that had a 10-to-1 stock split a couple weeks ago, and or maybe last week for that matter, and it is down in the $80 range right now. I see this stock as $100 to $110 stock by the end of this year, maybe even on earnings this quarter. So we'll have to wait and see what's coming out of those earnings later in this reporting season. And then we get into finance. These are the first to report as we come into earnings this Friday with JP Morgan. JP Morgan was down only 30 cents yesterday, but it was down. My dog feels that it's a buy today, and I would agree with him. I think that JP Morgan's going to get, this is kind of where it settled at after earnings for Q2. I think it's going to jump about $10 to $15 on earnings this Friday, and it should be up into the 220, 225 range. Now, maybe not on Friday, but I think by Monday or Tuesday, it should be up there. And then Morgan Stanley, it fell a little yesterday back into the 107s. Looks like it's gonna make that back easily by a multiple of 3 times today, based on where it is in the pre-market. And then Goldman had an off day yesterday, so I bought some Goldman on the dip. It dipped and then it spiked and then it dipped and then it went up again. I wouldn't say spike, but it climbed up again and then it fell off. I bought in at the 493 range. I just put in a limit order and waited it out to see if it would come back down. It went down as low as 491, but then it recovered up almost to 495. It looks like it's going to get up into the 496. I'm expecting it to get to the 498, almost 499 or $500 range today. And I might take some profits on that and see if it pulls back again tomorrow and try to rinse and repeat that strategy. Schwab is also up for earnings shortly. We can see we've got 7 days until Schwab earnings. I think we should see some positive things out of Schwab, so I'm bullish on Schwab as well. And then TD Bank, they got annihilated on their last earnings and had to allocate $2.6 billion for the SEC charges against them for the money laundering in their TD Bank North operation, mostly in the Northeast US. They've come back from the 78s up to almost 87 now. So this is an interesting one to be following. In my opinion, TD should be $110 stock. It has not been there in quite some time. If you look at the 1 year, you can see that the highest it's been is basically where it is now, and it's been down as low as, say, 73.88 in the low 70s. If you look at the 5 year, it's also well below its 5 year. Its 5 year top was 107, almost 108. I think it has the potential to get back there. This is a very strong organization, very good fundamentals, very well run for the most part. They did miss that issue that has cost them, but I think they're more than back on top of it and working through those money laundering and SEC allegations. So that's where we are today on the Tuesday, October the 8th. If you're liking these videos, please subscribe to the channel and leave me a like and a comment. Good luck.